book. She is a marvelous, awesome writer. She she's an American author of Gothic fiction, erotica, and Christian literature. She's perhaps best known for her influential series of novels, The Vampire Chronicles, and it revolves around the main character, Lestat. And if you haven't heard of Lestat, I don't even know what to tell you. Lestat is Interview with the Vampire, and he goes through all these books. And Queen of the Damned, of course, which I have music from, also awesome movie. Peter Townsend was marvelous in that. So she was born in New Orleans, and of course, of New Orleans got the center of voodoo, magic, and superstition. So, and a lot of her Mayfair witches are set in New Orleans. And the Interview with the Vampire Chronicles, awesome. You gotta love New Orleans. And someday I'll be getting there, I hope. Then she moved to Texas and later to San Francisco. She was raised a Catholic but became an agnostic as a young adult. And her Interview with the Vampire came out in 1976 while living in California, and she began writing the sequels in the 1980s. In the mid-2000s, she returned to Catholicism. She published the novels Christ the Lord, Out of Egypt, and Christ the Lord, The Road to Cana. Now, I have just read the first one. I have the other two. I have not read them. Hi, Lori. How are you, honey? Thank you for your suggestion tonight. Thanks to you. I was panicking there for a few because I think like I said, I was overthinking a bit. I was going to, and I'll do that in a couple weeks. We're going to do it on cults. So that's a whole segment there. Anyway, back to Anne Rice. I have read Christ the Lord. I have not read the other two. I do have them, but I have not read them. They're fictionalized accounts of certain incidents in the life of Jesus. And then she distanced herself again from it, citing she had some disagreements with the church's stances on social issues. But, it's a back and forth thing. Hi, Ike. Glad you're here. So, yeah, I'm going to be doing about 2 weeks probably on cults. I just got so into it. I think I was overthinking it some, and it got away from me a little bit. So I will tune that up, and we will be doing that. Anyway, Rice's books have sold nearly 100 million copies, placing her amongst the most popular authors, up there with Stephen King and all those, of course. And while reaction to her earlier works was kind of mixed, she became more popular with critics and readers, especially in the 1980s. Her writing style and the content of her works have been deeply analyzed by literary commentators. Why? They're books. Sometimes I don't understand why they gotta pick everything apart. Yeah, I know. It's going to be awesome, Lori. I promise. There's so much information out there. I think I was getting too much almost. I want to kind of trim it down a little and do a few more things. So, yeah, cults in a couple weeks, guys. So, anyway, I was saying, her writing style and content of her works have been deeply analyzed. Why? Why do books have to be analyzed? Books are to read. She's fiction. Okay? Sometimes I don't understand critics. That's like with movies. They don't like it. Well, that's their opinion. You may love the movie. So, she was married to a poet and painter, Stan Rice, for 41 years, from 61 until his death in 2002 from brain cancer. And they had 2 children, Michelle, who died of leukemia at age 5, and Christopher Rice, who is also an author. In addition to her vampire novel, she has written such books as The Feast of All Saints. That's a great book. Servant of the Bones, love that book. I might read a page or so out of it. I love that book, Servant of the Bones. And it formed the basis of a 2011 comic book miniseries. And several of the books from the Vampire Chronicles have been adapted as comics by several publishers. She's also an authored erotic fiction writer under the pen name Anne Rampling and A.N. Rolliqueur, including Exit to Eden, which was later a 1994 film. I'm not so much into her erotica books. I love her witches and vampires and such. That's my thing with her. I love her writing in those. She's so wonderful. Her characters, you can just picture these characters just come to life. She was born in 1941 in New Orleans. She worked as a personal executive for the U.S. Postal Service. Ooh, that was a surprise. And authored one novel at the time, The Impulsive Imp. Her older sister, Alice, later became a noted author of fantasy and horror fiction, which I'm going to have to check out. So she spent most of her childhood and teenage years in New Orleans, and which, of course, is a backdrop of many of her works. I love the New Orleans settings, and so far with authors such as Preston and Child, I have not been disappointed with the settings in New Orleans. Absolutely love it. About her given name is, which is a little strange. She was born Howard Allen Francis O'Brien, which is a little odd. But what she says about it is, well, my birth name is Howard Allen because apparently my mother thought it was a good idea to name me Howard. My father's name was Howard. She wanted to name me after him. And she thought it was a very interesting thing to do. I guess. She was a bit of a bohemian, a bit of a madwoman, a bit of a genius, and a great deal of a great teacher. And she had the idea that naming a woman Howard was going to give that woman an advantage, an unusual advantage in the world. So there you go. Her given name was Howard. Rice became Anne on her first day of school. Can't imagine why. A nun asked her what her name was. She told the nun Anne, which she considered a pretty name. They kind of let it go without correcting her. Her mom did, because she knew how self-conscious she was about having a boy's name. So, and she changed it legally in 1947. When she was 15, her mother died as a result of alcoholism, and her and her sisters were placed in St. Joseph Academies, and she described it as something out of Jane Eyre. So that's interesting. Oh, I'm going to have to plug in here. And later, Rice's father married. She had a stepmother, and she said her father wrote a formal letter. Let me get plugged in here. Batteries, you gotta love them. But I don't want to get stuck here. There we go. Okay. So, her father married Dorothy Van Beaver, and on the subject of their meeting, her father had wrote her a formal letter inviting her to lunch, which I hand delivered. I was so nervous, and the note he enclosed a pin, which she was to wear if she accepted the invitation. And the next day she had the pin on. And at 16, her father moved the family to North Texas, and there she met her future husband, Stan Rice, in a journalism class. And if you have never read any of Stan Rice's poetry, please do. It I like his style of writing. It's different. I really like it. If you have not read any of it, please do. The influence that Rice has had is Charles Dickens, Ernest Hemingway, Shakespeare, the Bronte sisters, Henry James, and Virginia Woolf as influence in her writing. So that kind of makes sense if you've read her books. I know you've read them, Lori, haven't you? I know you've read her books. And in 1973, while still grieving the loss of her daughter, she took a previously written short story and turned it into her first novel, the best-selling Interview with the Vampire. She based her character on Gloria Holden's character in Dracula's Daughter. Do you remember that movie? I can see that now. I didn't until that was said. If you've never seen Dracula's Daughter, do it. And to her, it established what vampires were. These elegant, tragic, sensitive people. And she was going with that feeling when writing Interview with the Vampire. And she didn't do a lot of research on it. She completed the novel, and she got many, many rejections. And of course, 100 no's means, you get one yes, which is all you need. She also developed OCD. She became obsessed with germs, thinking that she contaminated everything she touched, hand washing, check locks on windows and doors. And during that period, she says, what you see when you're in that state is every single flaw, and you can't control it, which is true. There are some things I'm a little OCD about, not a lot, but there's some things, if I don't do it, I don't know. You get that feeling like there's something left out, and you have to go back and do it. In August of 1974, after a year of therapy for her OCD, she attended a writers' conference in Squaw Valley. She met her future literary agent, Phyllis Seidel. And in 1974, Seidel sold the publishing rights to Interview with the Vampire. And she received a $12,000 advance of the hardcover rights. And during this time, you have to remember, most new authors were only receiving like $2,000 advances. So she got like 6 times the amount. That was the going rate. The book was published in May 1976. And then 1977, they traveled to Europe and Egypt for the first time. I don't know if you read Feast of All Saints and Cry to Heaven or any of her erotica books, but which includes The Claiming a Sleeping Beauty, Beauty's Punishment, Beauty's Release, under Anne Rampling. Then she returned to the vampire genre with The Vampire Lestat and Queen of the Damned, and I absolutely love that movie. Excuse me. I don't know if a lot of people liked it, but I absolutely love that movie. I thought the casting was brilliant. I really did. And if you've read about the Mayfair Witches, thank you, Lori. And if you've read her books about the Mayfair Witches and the people who played them in the movie, you could see where it was coming from. I thought they did an excellent job. Peter Townsend was just awesome as Lestat in that movie. Absolutely wonderful. Okay. And shortly after 1988 return to New Orleans, she penned The Witching Hour as an expression of her joy of coming home. She also continued her Vampire Chronicle series, which later grew to encompass 10 novels, and followed up on The Witching Hour with Lasher and Taltos, and completing the lives of the Mayfair Witches trilogy. She published Violin, A Tale of Ghostly Haunting in 1997, which I have. It is awesome. I loved The Witching Hour. I absolutely loved that book. Lasher was amazing. I love the backstories on her characters. They're so good. Lasher was brilliant. The man in the front yard. If